It's hard. Hey there. Welcome. So, you need to do Desert Treasure 2, huh? Want to kill some bad guys? Solve some puzzles? Don't worry, we got those. We got a whole lot of those. In fact, by the time we're done here, you ain't gonna want those anymore. Don't worry, I'm not gonna give you guys an overly large opening because this video does not need it. All I want to say ahead of the guide is that in my mind, Desert Treasure 2 is honestly one of the best quests, if not one of the best experiences in old school RuneScape to date. Jagex did such an amazing job making this quest very immersive. All the boss fights are very mechanically difficult but very versatile. There's just so much going on in this quest. It's a lot of fun. Make sure you take the time to understand and appreciate that, assuming that you do like it, obviously. One more quick note for those of you who normally watch my guides, you guys know that I normally put like a large preparation section for the guide itself for the quest, but this time around, I'm not going to do that. All I'm going to do is put a little graphic here showing what your like initial inventory should be, you know, what requirements are. I mean, it's one of the last quests in the game, so you should have a good idea already, but I'll just put something small here. Don't worry, later on in the guide, I do go into much more detail for each of the sections on what to bring and what to expect. You guys know it's coming. If you feel like this guide does help you, if it does help you do something related to any section of the quest, makes the fights easier, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe because it does help the YouTube algorithm. Makes the Google search, YouTube search, makes it go up a lot higher and helps people see these guides, especially if they're super helpful. All I really have ever been interested in is making sure people have the information they need to make it a little bit easier for them. And if you notice anything that I may not have included that may make it a little bit easier, please feel free to comment that information so I can, you know, add a comment or pin whatever you say on it to make it a little bit easier for the next person. With all that being said, let's get into it. Begin this quest by speaking with Asgarnia Smith in the ancient vault northeast of Narda. After accepting the quest, inspect the 4 statues that surround the vault. Speak to Asgarnia again, who will tell you to head to the Digsite exam center to talk to Terry Belando. Make your way to the exam center and speak with Terry Belando. Move through his dialogue, then head to the easternmost winch in the Digsite area. Use a rope on the winch, then head down where you will find Dr. Bannikin. Talk to him where he will tell you to mine the rocks nearby. Be prepared for a fight after you enter the next area. Once you mine them, head down into the next area where you will fight the Ancient Guardian. The Ancient Guardian has a 200 HP shield and 200 HP health pool. You need to break the shield, then kill it. For this fight, use Protect for melee and attack using melee, otherwise its shield will regenerate. Every 5 attacks, the ceiling will crumble, causing rocks to drop. Move out of the shadows to avoid taking damage. Once you defeated the Ancient Guardian, you'll call down Dr. Bannikin and enter the military installation. Inspect the Golem machine in this area, which will then need 8 cells to power up. Kinda like Guardians of the Rift. Search the nearby crates for a stack of 8 uncharged cells. Take those cells to the western side of the installation where you will see an altar surrounded by 4 totems. Here you need to cast specific burst spells or better on the totems to activate them. Then use the cells on the altar to obtain charged cells. Once the cells are charged, use them on the golem to open up a Sudoku-like puzzle you need to complete, which is 1 cell per section, per row, per column. Here's the completed solution of the puzzle that you can literally just copy. Once the golem is powered up, it will offer for you to query a line of text. Search the names Vardorvis, Perseria, Sucellus, and Whisperer, which are the names you got from the vault. Note that the inputs are fairly generous for typos, but I literally have it typed on the screen, man. Come on now. After searching the 4 names, Dr. Bannikin will thank you and leave. Then query one more term within the golem, which is Frost and Horn. At this point, let's say the prologue of this quest is now done and it's time to gather all 4 medallions for each of the names you just queried in the vault. Just a note here, guys, you can do this in whatever order you want. I'm following the wiki's order because that's just the order that I used. Definitely would say that the order does not represent easiest to hardest. And also worth noting, just based on my experience with this quest, I would break it up into these following sections. The reason that I do this is because you will likely need to bank constantly during this quest to swap out gear, get consumables, and change out needed items. So the points in between these sections represent points where it's a good idea to stop by a bank. I will explain at the beginning of each section what to do when it comes to depositing and withdrawing at a bank, as well as give a basic rundown of each of the fight. But just so you know, and I say this as a warning, aside from Duke Sucellus, these fights are all considerably harder than what you might be used to when it comes to quests. I'm by no means a RuneScape expert, Sweatlord, Max Cape Andy that knows more about this game than their kids. I can say I died a few times on a few of these fights, and I died a lot of times on Vardorvis and the Whisperer. So please take it from me, if you are still a mid-level player just getting your taste of some mechanically challenging fights, it's okay if you die or need to telly out. That's the process of learning, and it will make it much more meaningful when you finish it. Plus, it will help you in the future if you're ever trying to farm because you've kind of mastered the mechanics. Aside from Vanstrom Klaus, I'd say these are the hardest quest boss fights you can get. Maybe aside from herding the sheep for the sheep herder quest. The last thing I should mention here before we get the medallions is the mysterious figure. You'll encounter the mysterious figure the first time you get a medallion. This NPC basically teleports to you and just demands the medallion, and you say no, fuck off. Now, anytime you get another medallion, she can ambush you once again, only this time she'll just literally straight up attack you, and she uses all 3 attack styles, teleblocks, voodoo magic, Banjo-Kazooie levels of bullshit, and the moral of the story, at least to me, is do not waste your time with this NPC. Just die or get away or do whatever you have to do, but don't sit there and just constantly try to fight it. If you do die, you're going to be teleported to this underground bunker and have to search the bed near you to get a hairpin, then escape the jail, go to the chest nearby, and get your stuff back to continue the quest. Leaving the portal in that area to go to some random ass location in the desert near the vault, trust me, it is not worth wasting your time when you can just die or run away and move on. The first medal we're going to be going for is Carnifex Maximus Vardorvis. Now exit the military installation and speak to Elyssa just northeast of the Digsite. Tell her that you're looking for info on Vardorvis, she will direct you to the Burning Man monument in Lovakinj. At this point, head to Lovakinj, stopping by a bank before or once you get there. We're banking for the quest objectives leading up to the fight with Vardorvis, so here's what you can deposit and here's what you need to bring. Head to the Burning Man monument found on the western side of Lovakinj. Talk to Barris, a Lovakinj historian who will explain the history of the Burning Man. He will then mention the Stranglewood, the shithole that Vardorvis is at, and also tell you that there's a botanist who went missing over there. Spoiler alert, it's Kasonde. Spoiler, you fight him, you fight everyone during this fucking quest. Now, head to the botanist's house in Hosidius, right next to the estate agent's house. In the botanist's house, search the desk to receive a strange potion and a potion note. Read the note to learn about the potion, as well as the location of a rowboat to the Stranglewood, found south of Mount Quita-Mortem. From here, it's time to head to Stranglewood via the rowboat, which is southwest of Mount Quita-Mortem and northeast of absolutely fucking nowhere. Newly implemented ferry code BLS is the easiest way to get here, so I'd strongly recommend using that travel method because, again, this place is literally barely even on the map. So a quick note prior to this section, there are infected NPCs all over Stranglewood that will chase you if they see you, and they are fast. It sucks. There's also these red vein looking things on the ground. Imagine these are like bells around your neck. You step on them, everyone and their mother will come chasing your ass. Finally, there's a neat looking new status bar in the corner, which is your infected level. If it reaches 100%, you're going to be overwhelmed by the infection and respawn at the last location you were uninfected. There's a lot of stuff to deal with here, but here's an easy one sentence explanation. Keep running, don't step on red veins, don't get 100% infected. Simple as that. Upon entering the Stranglewood, run south until you get to a barricaded building, which you can jump over the barricade and meet Kasonde Shaw. Talk to Shaw, where he will take you down below to play a minigame of protecting him from the Strangled. For this section, you'll have to defend Kasonde for 3 minutes from oncoming waves of the Strangled. If you fail, you basically just start again. Spoiler, expect to fail once because it takes some understanding, but it is a lot of fun, I will admit. So to play this game, around the area are 6 stone chests, 4 of which need to be lockpicked and which contain a total of 2 barricades and 4 satchels. The satchels contain explosives that can be detonated remotely, which is effective at wiping out large groups, and the barricade provides a temporary defense against the oncoming Strangled, allowing them to be attacked from a distance. To open the lockpick chest, simply move to the tumblers by clicking on slots above them. The fastest way to do this is the brute force method. First, select all ones on the lock, hit confirm, and then move all the locks that aren't green up by 1. Then rinse and repeat until you have all the locks figured out. Doing this multiple times, my recommendation is to do the lockpick chest as quickly as possible, making sure to stop whatever you are doing the second that Shaw tells you where the first wave is coming from so you can set up barricades and bombs. Kasonde will tell you where the waves of Strangled are coming in from, so plan accordingly and time the detonations right. If barricades break, ice spells are recommended to freeze the Strangled as they will move towards Kasonde. I didn't use ice spells, opting to just make sure I had the barricades and bombs set up quickly and ended up having to melee a few NPCs to death, which wasn't too bad. The key to this minigame is is learning the timing of reacting to what Kasonde says and setting it up proactively. Keep that in mind, and it should only take you a couple tries to do this. Once 3 minutes pass, any remaining strangled will basically die. Once you're done with Kasonde's minigame, talk to him to get more big lore talk, ultimately leading up to the next step, which is getting 2 items for him to make a new serum to become immune to the strangled infection. The locations of these items are on screen, so prepare to run and let's get to it. Before you leave though, there are stone chests that have stink bombs which you can use to distract the strangled, but I personally did not use them. Instead, just running like crazy and avoiding the red veins. Note that all around the area are also strange shrines, which will restore your run energy, so make use of those as you need to. The first item Kasonde needs is a Korbal orb, located slightly northwest of the large temple. From the barricade, head southwest to the first intersection, then run directly north, then east, past the south side of the large pyramid. Finally, run north again. The Korbal herb is located on a small outcrop with a strangled boar. If you become fully infected, you will respawn here. Basically, gathering the herb serves as a respawn point. The next item is Argian berries found at the southwestern camp near a strangled lynx. From the herb location, run south towards the bridge and run southwest near the lynx. If you need a break, running southeast after the bridge will lead towards a Stranglewood mine, which does not spawn the strangled people. Once you have picked these berries, if you become fully infected, now you're going to respawn right here. Likewise, leaving and arriving by rowboat takes you back to this camp. Once you have both items, head back to the temple, which is northwest of the building you and Kasonde were initially hiding in. Once inside, kill the 2 strangled attacking Kasonde and then talk to him. He'll tell you he is infected but was already dying of some random thing, so the shit's not really going well for him anyway. He will ask that you brew the potion and give you an unfinished serum. Add the Korbal herb, then add the Argian berries to create the Strangler serum. Drinking it will grant you permanent immunity from the Strangler's infection, but not from the damage dealt by them, so keep that in mind. And at this point, it's time to prepare to fight Vardorvis. The location for this fight is right here at the ritual site, and once you go there for the first time, you can use a shortcut here to get back easily if you ever leave Stranglewood and come back. So let's talk about the Vardorvis fight. As some of you who have probably watched my videos at some point, you know I always try to do quests with the minimum required levels and gear. This fight, however, like many in Desert Treasure 2, is not friendly to mid-level stats and gear. In my mind, it is not hyperbole to say DT2 is on a different level from every quest OSRS has to offer. The boss fights are tough and require extreme concentration if you aren't rocking relatively high level gear and I'd say 85 plus combat stats. With that being said, Vardorvis. Vardorvis is weak against Slash, has high defense, and is a 2x2 monster. Osmutant's Fang, Abyssal Whip, Voidwalker, basically any Slash weapon works really well here. Any vampire boosting gear or salve amulet effects do not work on him. Having a good special attack weapon like BGS makes this fight a lot easier if you use it at the beginning. As you can see, I used a real wild ass combination of gear here I never thought I'd see on my screen in order to kill him. Vardorvis uses a melee attack, which can be reduced by 75% with Protect from Melee, as well as 4 different special attacks. I'm going to cover the special attacks in terms of order of importance to react to. And keep in mind this is my opinion, which differs a little bit from the wiki. The first one is Vardorvis' head projectile. Vardorvis' head will appear from the ground and shoot a blue projectile that will turn off your overhead prayers. Protect from Missiles negates this special attack and should be switched to immediately, even if you're in melee range, as it does not attack in sync with the body. Should the attack land, walk under the boss to stall his damage and reactivate your prayers. But realistically, let's just keep it super simple. Just quick prayer flick to mitigate this completely. If you aren't someone who uses like the F keys to switch from your prayer book to your inventory, I'd recommend learning something like that because it makes switching very fast and seamless. This is the most important mechanic to me personally because this is the one that can throw you off extremely fast and break your rhythm because your prayer gets turned off, you get slapped for 15 to 20 damage, and now you're freaking out wondering what you need to do. Mastering this mechanic is #1 priority in my opinion. Second is the virus cells. The player screen will be covered with a red tendril and 3 to 8 red spores will appear in the center. Quickly click on all of the spores in order to mitigate the damage from the root. This is extremely important because that damage is absolutely nasty if you don't get all the spores. And if you get comboed by an axe and Vardorvis' melee along with this, it's basically lights out. Luckily this is probably the easiest mechanic to deal with, so don't worry too much. The wiki says this is the most important mechanic, which is definitely critical, but it is extremely easy to react to and doesn't take a lot of skill. The homing spikes. Vardorvis will slam the ground, causing spikes to form underneath the player. Quickly move to avoid taking damage. The best method for this is to stand in the position I'm about to talk about for the next mechanic, the swinging axes. The swinging axes. 2 or 3 axes appear within the arena. If the axe hits you, you get a gross chunk of damage and an even grosser chunk of bleed damage. To deal with it, find a safe section of the arena to avoid this. If you watch here, the meta is to stand next to one of the pillars in the arena and just move back and forth depending on the axis coming. This positioning makes the fight way easier, mainly because when standing next to the pillars, the spikes typically won't pop up in the areas that you're in. As a final note, the wiki does state that simply standing in a single corner and letting one axe hit you can be significantly less damaging than running around. The axe hits below 20, and the bleed only applies when you attack or move. Listen, don't do this. This is a terrible idea, especially for someone wanting to farm this boss later. Learn how to use the pillars for positioning because it's way easier than what you would think. After you defeat Vardorvis, pick up the temple key and return to the temple. Be aware that you are about to have to fight Kasonde, which isn't a walk in the park either by any means, so resupply before proceeding further. We'll hop to the next section to discuss the supply you should have for that. Fighting Kasonde is nowhere near as crazy as Vardorvis, but still requires basic mechanic understanding. The best gear setup is range centric, so like God D'hide with a DCB or blowpipe, along with food, prayer potions, and an anti-venom potion. You can also bring a stamina sip here, but it's not completely necessary. Once you have your inventory ready, head over to Kasonde in the temple. Give the temple key to Kasonde. He will tell you for about the 80th time he's dying and needs to do some bullshit one more time before entering the gates of Valhalla, and I guess that includes trying to kick your ass. So he does try to do that, and thus the fight begins. Kasonde will attack you with accurate melee and ranged attacks, and will also occasionally heal as you fight, meaning this is literally just a straight up DPS race. In addition, he also has 2 special attacks. First one is potions. Kasonde will periodically throw potions on where you're standing. Walk away where he aimed to avoid it, otherwise you're going to take 35 plus damage and wonder why he doesn't just kill all the strangled for you by throwing these magic fabuloso potions on the ground that hit so extremely hard. If and when you do avoid it, the contents will spill on the floor, preventing you from standing there again. This is also where the DPS race idea comes into play. Apparently, the Zamarakian Hosta or Dragon Spear special attack will clear all the liquid spills on the floor. However, I opted not to use this because the wiki says, though it is not known if this is intentional, which is just too spooky for me. The green potions will inflict venom requiring an anti-venom. The Serpentine Helm is useful here as it provides high defensive bonuses and blocks venom damage. The orange potions will damage you for 10 to 20 hit points and disable your protection prayers. Running over the orange splats will also cause this to trigger. As you can probably guess by hearing all this, you will be kiting Kasonde around the room, avoiding his rainbow of sulfuric acid all over the place. His second special attack is called Explosion, which is a charged attack. This can be avoided by blocking his line of sight with one of the pillars around the room. Basically, whenever you see him winding up to blow his load, hide behind one of the pillars, just like the Robert the Strong fight during Dragon Slayer 2. As I stated earlier, the most effective strategy for this boss is to kite him around the room with range, running around the room so he can't get in melee distance. Use Protect from missiles throughout the fight and keep out of melee distance again. After defeating him, he will tell you he has committed a top 10 anime betrayal and had Vardorvis' medallion all along, thinking you wouldn't help him cure his uncurable disease if he gave it to you. Then finally, mercifully for both you and him, dies. Return to the barricaded building where you first met Kasonde and search the stone chest in the northeast corner to obtain Vardorvis' medallion. From here, take the medallion to the ancient vault and place it on Vardorvis' statue in the northeast corner. As a quick note, you will need to do this for every single medallion you get here. Once you're done, head to a bank and get supplied. It's time to move on to the next medallion, which in this case is the Guardians of the Rift Girl, Mia Perseria. For the Guardians of the Rift Girl medallion, you'll need a face mask or Slayer helmet to deal with the toxic gases in the scar, as well as any combat style gear you want. I would also bring some stamina potions of food and a couple of prayer potions just in case. Now make your way to the Temple of the Eye. This can be reached quickly via the Amulet of the Eye teleport, minigame group teleport, wizard. There's a bunch of different ways to get there. You know what to do. Once you're at the Guardians of the Rift lobby, speak to the Catalytic Guardian by the portal, who has been waiting to inform you that the Great Guardian smells something spicy in the scar. You tell the Guardian to send you to the scar. He says that's a bad idea. You say just send me to the fucking scar. And upon entering the scar, kill all the stuff killing each other. then hop over the stepping stones. Note that if you leave the scar in return, you no longer need to kill the stuff that was killing each other previously. After crossing the stones, run all the way east to a rowboat and attempt to board it, and you will be interrupted by none other than Kasonde telling you he's done. Just kidding, it's actually Wizard Persten, who got whooped into the scar during the Guardians of the Rift entry quest and has somehow survived the whole ordeal. She'll take you back to her camp nearby, gives you some lore talk, and tells you need to burn all the ships to wake up the big snack in the water. Spoiler, it is the Leviathan. So it's your job to burn the ships, which require you to go into 3 different tunnels and play a bunch of mini-games. Once you're done talking to Persten, enter through the first open passage and proceed to solve the puzzles in the maze. Just a note, whenever you complete a puzzle, you don't have to go back and do it again in the future. You can safely leave the scar and restock on supplies if you need to. 3 passages differ in order for all players, so I'm just going to show you guys the order I had, and you can move between each section in the video timeline to match your order. The objective for each passage is exactly the same. Get the gooey note, the slimy tablet in each passage, do the 3 minigames in each passage, then go burn the ships at the very end. As a final note, throughout the mazes, just like in all the other areas, you're going to find chests with scarred scraps. These restore 20% run energy and provide a nice stamina effect, as well as 15 hit points and 25% of your praetor points. Each subsequent passage will have scarred lesser demons with different combat styles, so focus on a single protection prayer for each specific passage if you want to use protection prayers. Equip your Slayer helmet or face mask if you haven't, and let's get to it. So going into the southeast passage, you're going to arrive at the southeast corner of the map. Note the map on the screen for all pertinent locations here. The gooey note and slimy tablet can be found as well, indicated on the map to the right. 3 minigames for this passage are the Axon Terminal, Broken Nerve Endings, and Summoner's Circle. For the Axon Terminal, you have to hit the Abyssal Axons to connect their correct terminal. You can hit both diagonally and directly. There's also lightning strikes in this room, which can deal around 15 damage. Avoid by moving out of the shadow spots prior to them hitting. Do not overthink it, just move the Axons to their correct terminal. If one does get stuck, you can right click, reset it, and try again. For the broken nerve endings, dive in and break the nerve endings around the room, and combine them to the appropriate nerve endings in the center of the room. The nerve endings will respawn shortly after being broken. Keep in mind there is limited air in the room, requiring players to use the air bubbles around the room to replenish their oxygen. Basically, you'll be doing 1 nerve ending at a time because your oxygen depletes extremely fast. Move between the oxygen bubbles to the closest one to the ending you need to get. You need to make 1 dust nerve ending, 1 lava, 1 smoke, and 1 steam. In all, that basically requires 3 fire nerve endings, 2 air, 2 earth, and 1 water. Gather all the endings and create the combinations, then use them on their corresponding nerve ending. Finally, we have the Summoning Circle. This room is accessed from the southernmost neural teleporter. Here you kill all the scarred imps who are providing protection prayers to the lesser demons in the center. The lesser demons will also summon scarred lesser demons and the scarred hellhounds to deter the player, both of which can hit through protection prayers. Just focus down the imps and the lesser demons in the center, basically the things that you started off with. Once they're all dead, anything else that's in there will die as well. After completing all 3 rooms, move to the shipwreck area and gather all the items needed to burn down the ship. Going into the middle passage, you're going to arrive in the very middle of the map. Note the map on screen for all the pertinent locations. Here is where you can find your gooey note and your slimy tablet. The mini games for this passage are the Abyssal Stem, Brain Pillar, and Unlit Veins. For the Abyssal Stem, you have to dive in and touch the Abyssal Stem. Then observe the order in which the Abyssal growths glow and touch them in the same order. Basically just a super simple memory game. Utilize the air bubbles in the room to replenish your oxygen as needed. The Brain Pillar room is found right next to Portal B. Here you defend the Abyssal antibodies from the Scarred Hellhounds and Scarred Lesser Hellhounds until the Brain Pillar is fully healed. The attackers will only ever attack the antibodies. It's literally just a race to burn these guys down. The last room is accessed by using the blue neural teleporter, which can be accessed via the Brain Pillar room, shown as B on the map here, and then running east of the green neural teleporter, which is shown as A, and then using it and running north. In the Unlit Veins room, you take 4 illuminating lures from the light leeches and use them to light all 4 of the damaged growths. Unfortunately, you can fail to get the lures and get attacked because of this, where you will likely need to kill the spawns or run away from them and reset. Once the room lights up, the Crimson and Radiant Veins will appear, and you need to repair them. To repair them, use Crimson and Radiant Fiber on the veins, which are acquired from killing Crimson and Radiant Sanguisfera. These use very accurate blood spells that heal themselves, so please use Protect from Magic while you're killing them. You need to kill 3 of each in order to finish this. After completing all 3 rooms, move to the shipwreck area and gather all the items needed to burn down the ship. And going into the Northwest Passage, you're going to arrive in the northwest corner of the map. Note the map on screen for all the pertinent locations you need, and here is where the Gooey Note and Slimy Tablet can be found. The 3 minigames for this passage are the Abyssal Tether, the Catalyst, and the Damaged Growth. For the Abyssal Tether, you must reach the Abyssal Tether at the end of the maze. This is done by clicking on the Cerebral Orbs and moving with them, i.e. adjacent to them, meaning you're standing by them the entire time as it moves. If you aren't next to it, you're going to get electrocuted, hit for 5 to 10 damage, and you're going to be sent back all the way to the beginning. Also important to note, once it reaches the end of its path, it will disappear, meaning you need to move to the next tether while the one you are currently at is still moving, as you can see me doing right here. The green pathfinders will travel in the direction you are facing when you hit them, and the red ones will travel in the opposite direction from where you hit. Ensure that your run is turned off for this section and make your way through the maze. Here is the path you need to take. The next minigame is called the Catalyst, accessed quickly by using the green neural teleporter in the northeast corner. Here you have to break the nerve endings around the area, use them on the Catalyst, and match the rune symbols to disrupt them. You have to make multiple combination nerves here. Here is the total count of each nerve that you're going to need to make those combinations. Combine the nerve endings, create all the required combination ones, and then feed them to their correct base. The last room for this passage is the Damaged Growth, accessed quickly by using the blue neural teleporter in the west corner and then running southward. Here you gotta take 4 illuminating lures from the light leeches while getting absolutely clobbered by them, so make sure you use Protect from Melee. Use the lures to light the Damaged Growth, then the room will light up in the center showing runic energies which you must touch in the correct order. You have to return to each energy as you get the order, so for instance when one turns white, try another energy. If the next one does not turn white, return to the first one that turned white. You get the whole point. It's extremely similar to the minigame that you play with the Dark Mage in the Abyss during the Into the Abyss mini quest. After completing all 3 rooms, move to the shipwreck area and gather all the items needed to burn down the ship. After completing this section, you'll have burnt all 3 ships and the Leviathan will become active. Talk to Persten and get ready. This is another fight that requires a lot of mechanical understanding. So I would head to a bank and get the supplies you'll need, which I'll cover in the next section. Banking for the Leviathan should go something like this. Wear ranged gear as the Leviathan can't be fought with melee and has a relatively high magic defense. I would also bring plenty of food, a few prayer potions or super restore potions, a ranging pot, and a stamina potion, an emergency teleport, and runes to cast a shadow spell from the Ancient Magic Spellbook, meaning yes, you do need to be in the Ancient Magic Spellbook. Stamina potions for the final phase, where if you are out of run energy, it can get really chaotic while trying to keep up with the Abyssal Pathfinder. Maybe it's just me, but I found the Leviathan to be a lot easier than Vardorvis. There are 2 alternating phases to this boss with a final burn phase at 20%. The first phase involves the Leviathan casting 3 different types of attacks at you, with the 3 varying color balls each representing 3 different damage types. The green arrow is ranged, the blue burst is magic, and the orange sword is melee. This is super simple. Don't overthink it, just prayer swap to the correct overhead based on the orb. Leviathan's gonna spit out 4 or 5 attacks, then shake the ground, causing some rocks to fall. One of those rocks will always fall on your location, so just move 1 tile over to avoid this. Once it's done, the Leviathan will resume slowly casting spells at you. Now, each time the Leviathan drops rocks, when it starts recasting spells, they will be a tiny bit faster each time. I think it's like maybe a tick or 2 quicker than last time. This is not noticeable until about the 4th iteration of this, where the spells start to become pretty quick, and where I would recommend most people trigger the second of the 2 alternating phases, which is the Leviathan's special attacks. To trigger the phase change, you need to cast a shadow spell on the Leviathan. Any shadow spells will work here. When you hit the Leviathan with a shadow spell, it will become stunned for 9 seconds. What you need to do in that time is run behind the Leviathan and attack it. Doing so will cause it to become unstunned and perform one of its 2 special attacks.
which are the smoke attack and the lightning attack. The smoke attack involves the Leviathan spitting out rocks rapidly right onto your location, and you need to move out of each one of those locations. This is the same exact thing as the Vorkath mechanic with the poison, only the rocks will stay in place. 10 rocks total will drop, then after it's complete, you'll have a couple seconds to run behind those rocks to avoid a very large smoke AoE attack. This attack hits like an absolute truck and you should avoid it at all costs. The mechanic is relatively simple. Walk a straight line, then run behind that line. Keep in mind there's definitely an important role here where you place these rocks for later, so remember that because we're going to get to it very soon. The lightning attack is a frontal cone AoE attack that the Leviathan will continuously cast at you, and you need to dodge by running in circles around it. This is definitely the more chaotic of the two attacks because if you are later on in the fight and have placed rocks around your running path, you could end up getting caught in those rocks and taking a shitload of damage. That's why placing the rocks down outside of the perimeter of the boss is extremely important. Some of you may have also heard there's a Wook's walk method for this mechanic. I chose not to include it in here and not explain it because as most of my guides are, I'd rather you just do it properly the first time. Then you can optimize the method later on with the cheese mechanics and things that are going to make it super simple. Plus the Wook's walk in general is not an easy thing to learn for most people. Once you dodge whichever special attack happens, the Leviathan will resume the phase 1 attacks with the intensity being completely reset just like in the beginning of the fight. Basically all you're going to do is repeat this. Pump the boss, swap prayers, and move out of falling rocks for 3 or 4 iterations of the Leviathan's casts. Then stun it with a shadow spell, run behind it, hit it, then react to the special attack. If the special attack is the smoke one, try to place the rocks outside of your path around the boss. That last part is also important for the final burn phase at 20%, which is the last part right here. At 20%, the Leviathan will enrage and cast only melee and range orbs at the normal, slow 2-tick pace. At this point, an Abyssal Pathfinder is going to spawn in the northwestern corner of the arena. You have to stay adjacent to this Pathfinder to avoid taking any unnecessary damage and receive a very useful accuracy boost. Attacking the boss, swapping prayer, and moving with the Pathfinder can be chaotic, especially if you have the rocks in your path. Again, this is why placement of the rocks is extremely critical. Basically, all you need to do here is burn down the boss while doing those 3 things. Follow the Pathfinder, swap your prayer, and attack. A lot of people I know struggle with this, and I did too, but once I understand the importance of placement of the rocks, it became so incredibly easy. I know it seems like a lot, but aside from the 2 special attacks, there isn't a lot of demanding mechanics here. Once you finish off the Leviathan, climb down to the handholds to the northeast and cross a stepping stone to reach Perseria's ship. After doing all that shit, Persten will come to you and say some random stuff I just didn't bother to read, and then leave. Search the debris nearby to get the medallion. From here, travel to the ancient vault like with the last medallion and place it on her statue in the southeast corner. You'd think we're halfway home, but you know, 92 is half of 99, right? On to the Duke, but first we'll stop by a bank. As you begin this section, note that all of your items will be temporarily removed while you're in the prison. For this section, you'll need melee combat gear, food, combat potions, prayer or restore potions, all the basic stuff. I would have 4 or 5 free inventory spaces as well. When you're ready, head to the Ghorrock prison and enter the heavy door in the northeastern room. You'll be met by Captain Malleta, then knocked out and put into a prison. When you wake up, inspect the wall on the north side of the cell to hear a mysterious voice. Talk to the dude, then search the skeleton for a prisoner's letter, then the latrine bucket to get a knife. Give it to the guy you just talked to get a chisel. Next, search the bed to get a lockpick. Finally, give it to the soldier, who will free you after he frees himself. Leaving your cell, you talk to the soldier, who you realize is actually the assassin you encountered during Secrets of the North. He'll give you some lore talk, then tell you to find the key to the cell containing your items. He'll then give you back the lockpick and disappear. From here, we need to gather a whole bunch of different keys and move through the prison. Note that throughout the prison are crates with rations, just like all the other areas, that will restore your run energy and give you a stamina boost. Use them whenever you want. The first key to get is the Sapphire Key. Using this map, point Y is where the assassin left you. Make your way to point L, then lockpick using the same method you did with Kasonde back in Stranglewood. Take the south path and make your way around, looping south to the east entrance of the refugee camp. Open the southern gate and enter the room with the altar. Search it for a warning note, which hints towards the passcode to the chest in the southeast corner. I'll save you some time here, and I'm going to save you a lot of time on all the other stuff and just give you exactly what you need to know. The code is 214013, which you can use to unlock the chest and get the Sapphire Key. Now make your way back to the main block and open the Sapphire Gate directly north. From here, enter the northwestern room, which has a grid of chests. Search the crate in the northeast corner for a requisition note and a grid note. Then go to the chest located in the middle row in the back of the room. The passcode to unlock this chest is LIES, L-I-E-S. So input that to get the emerald key. Just an FYI, once you leave this room, Jhallan will start following you and attacking you, and his damage can add up, so be quick with your next steps. If he does kill you, you're going to respawn back in this room you're in right now with the emerald key. After leaving the room, run down the eastern passage into a small room with a blocked crevice. Unblock it and enter the room. Then enter the room with 7 beds in it. Search the crate in the southeast corner to receive a code converter and a magic lantern. Here you're supposed to check the chest by the beds and then run around with the lantern, but let's skip all of that. Go to the chest in the bottom right corner and enter the following passcode. Up, right, left, down, right, up, which gives you the ruby key. Return to the main block and open the ruby gates to the northwest. Make your way to the cell with the locked chest and search the bed for a library note and a strange slider. Go to the chest in the room and enter the passcode WRATH, W-R-A-T-H, which gives you the diamond key. Return to the main block and talk to the assassin on the west side. Talk to him about some lore stuff or whatever, then open the cell and open the chest to recover your items. The assassin will ask you to light a pack of firecrackers he left in the refugee camp to attract his attention. From here, you need to travel this way to the refugee camp. Once you're there, search the pack next to the center pillar and light it up. So now you need to survive for about 3 minutes until the assassin arrives. Jhallan does not need to be fought, simply use protect from magic and you're playing basically tag with these guys, running around the center pillar to avoid being hit. Sometimes you're going to be teleported to him and become frozen, at which point shadows are going to converge on you. You need to click away as quickly as possible so you don't get mushrooms stamped by this attack. There's also these shadow clones that spawn. They will not follow you if you run behind a pillar, but can pile on you if you stay in melee range. Basically, if you just stay still, you're going to get absolutely cucked. This section is not too bad, just keep moving and use the middle pillar to your advantage. And click away as quickly as possible when teleported. Once 3 minutes are up, the shortcut scene is going to play where Jhallan is frozen in an ice barrage. The assassin will then appear and tell you the asylum entrance is now open. Now it's time to fight the Duke. Thankfully, this is definitely the easiest fight of this quest, so let's knock it out. As I just said, Duke is definitely the weakest boss by a mile. Anyone who has ever played World of Warcraft and raided Enrage will see this is basically the exact same thing as the G'huun fight. As far as banking is concerned, you're going to need your best melee gear, some food, combat potions, maybe a prayer potion if you're feeling squirrely. Duke is weak to Demon Bane weapons, so Arclight would help a lot here, but I just chose to go with old reliable, the Abyssal Whip. You need a pickaxe and a pestle and mortar as well, but you can get these by taking the ones hanging on the wall by the asylum entrance, which if you do that, obviously save a few inventory spaces. Before fighting him, you're going to need to wake him up by creating 2 Arder-Musca poisons from resources found in the room. Up the stairs on both sides of the chamber, there are extremities that periodically open their eyes and emit a red gaze, which will freeze you and deal a very large amount of damage. I mean, these things are annoying as shit and can really hurt if you aren't careful, so be patient. Each of the extremities open their eyes in succession, after which there's a brief period of rest, allowing you to run past. Watch the extremities to see which one opens their eyes first, then let the other 2 open theirs as well, and then immediately after seeing all 3 of them go, run to the mushrooms and grab 2 of them. While doing this, you also have to deal with stunning energy attacks, which are just basically things that emit from the floor and are indicated by a shadow on the ground. If you get stunned there and then you get hit by the eye, it sucks. It really sucks. At the end of each path, pick 2 of each of the mushrooms, then use your pestle and mortar on them, and you should ultimately end up with 12 of each kind of mushroom powder. Once you have the mushroom powder, head down to the Duke's area. On the sides of the arena in front of the Duke are salt deposits, which you must mine for 12 Salax salt. Once you have all that, fill the fermentation vats with both of those ingredients, the mushrooms and the salt, and then empty it to retrieve the Arder-Musca poisons. Note that this can be accomplished in any order, and when you're ready, use both poisons on the Duke to begin the fight. Duke only has a few attacks, but all of them hit pretty hard, with one basically being almost a one-shot mechanic. Let's talk about them. Since you're probably going to be fighting in melee, let's start with the slam attack. When in melee range, Duke Sucellus will slam his arms on the floor, summoning spikes of ice on every tile directly adjacent to him. The spikes can deal up to 12 damage, and Sucellus's melee can deal upwards of 30. Use protect from melee by default at all times to avoid this. The acid gas attack. Sucellus will launch a projectile towards one of the vents, which becomes 2 later in the fight. This causes the vent to emit gas, which deals rapid damage every game tick to whoever stands next to it. As soon as the gas emerges, run to the pillar on the other side of the room, while avoiding standing on any tile that's directly adjacent to Sucellus. The freezing gaze. This is the big bad attack. Every 6 attacks, Sucellus will open his eye and unleash his gaze upon you. If you aren't LOSing him behind one of the pillars near you, you're going to take a shitload of damage, probably die, and have a lot of regret. That's basically all of the mechanics. And the strategy for beating this through melee is to use the pillars to run back and forth and dodging his melee attacks with proper timing. It's super simple. Every time Sucellus uses a slam attack, as soon as his arms hit the ground, and immediately run back behind the pillar. Basically, you're just flinching him. Do this 6 times, then move back again to dodge his eye attack. Finally, every time there's a vent being activated, run to the other side of him and use that pillar. You're going to take chip damage from the spikes initially spawning, but with high healing food and having relatively good defense, it's really easy. That's literally it. Attack and move 6 times, move to dodge the eye, move to the other side of the room to dodge the vents. Really straightforward, it's a pretty quick fight. After defeating Duke Sucellus, take the odd key that he drops and enter in the room on the west side of the main hallway. Talk to the assassin and open the chest in the corner to receive Sucellus' medallion, then take it to the ancient vault and place it on his statue in the southwest corner. Pretty easy, right? Not bad at all. Hopefully the Whisperer is just as easy.
The next step on this parade of pain is the Whisperer. Man, what a shit show. This boss is quite the thorn in the ass. I'm getting ahead of myself though. For this section, we're going to be heading to the ruins of Camdozaal, that place underneath that mountain over by the barbarian village. Secret treasure located right underneath our nose. Who'd have thought? Anyway, you're going to need weight reducing clothing initially, a ring of visibility, some food and prayer potions, as well as at least 8 free inventory spaces. There's a lot of running around and teleporting in Camdozaal, along with dodging bad shadow guys, and it does take a minute to get through the Whisperer, so just be prepared. We'll talk a little bit later about the gear and therapy for that fight. Make your way to the ruins of Camdozaal. Here's a list of ways to get there pretty quickly. Once you're in there, speak to Ramarno, at which point he will teleport to the Forge Northwest. So chase him down and speak to him again. At the bank chest east of Ramarno, speak to Prescott, the head archaeologist, and he will tell you that he found some old cursed piece of garbage somewhere in the manlit pit. He also says that he's schizophrenic and has been hearing voices, which is why he's a bitch and won't go back down. You'll ask him about going down there, to which he'll commend your bravery and give you a very long rope to use. Super cool. Once you're done with Ramrod, head northwest towards the Camdozaal mines where the sinkhole is. Attach a very long rope on the rock there and climb down into the Lasser Undercity. Now, this city is extremely large and very annoying to navigate at times. Luckily, throughout the Undercity, you'll see these convenient transportation icons on the map. These are teleporters that allow easy navigation of the Undercity. Activate them whenever you pass by one. If you don't, you will regret it. There are also these strange pools around the Undercity that can restore the player's run energy. Use them whenever you want. It's basically free run energy anyway. The first section to go to is the Science District in the southwest. Once there, go to the northwestern building, take the Shadow Blocker schematic and the green Shadow Key from inside. Then take the purple Shadow Key from the building south of the one you were in. From here, head northeast towards the residential district, then south towards the sunken cathedral. Eventually, you're going to fade and reappear in the house of Ketla, an Imkando dwarf. She will tell you that a shadowy entity was responsible for your blackout and that it must be stopped by breaking the totem that links the real world with the Shadow Realm. Pretty scary if you ask me, very Yu-Gi-Oh-esque. After she says this, you're like, not so fast, Big Mom, I have a ring of visibility which she asks to see. She will then tell you it's useless down here. You tell her that at least I'm trying to come up with solutions. An argument ensues, potential assault, all in a day's work, right? Eventually she says it won't work on its own, but she has a shard from the totem that can allow you to actually enter the Shadow Realm. The Blackstone Fragment. Could have started off with that, but whatever. Ketla believes the totem is located in the sunken cathedral, but its entrance is blocked by shadows. She will then give you the fragment and provide no additional support whatsoever. Then give the Shadow Blocker schematic you picked up earlier to her and she will make you a Shadow Blocker. Note that for the rest of the time here, all you're really doing is getting the tools and resources to continuously power up this blocker and other tools you get, eventually making it strong enough to get to the Whisperer. Because of this, you're going to have to go back to Ketla and give her a new schematic and get the powered up blocker, which you can always pick up on the workbench near her. So the way the blocker works is you place it down and standing next to the Shadow Blocker in the Shadow Realm will ensure players stay sane, no matter how many voices they hear in their head. The Shadow Realm can be accessed using black puddles found throughout the Undercity. Upon entry, you will have a sanity meter that depletes by 1% every tick, as well as lost souls who can drain your sanity. Once the player loses their sanity, they will begin taking damage at a rapid pace. The Blackstone Fragment allows instant departure from the Shadow Realm, and the player's sanity will restore by 10% every tick once you're out. Also, just an FYI, you may notice these white remnants scattered throughout the Undercity whilst in the Shadow Realm. All but one are optional to touch during the quest, and touching some of these will result in a Shadow Keeper attacking you. You can get them easily later, but for now, just don't touch them. For the rest of this section, you'll need to find the schematics and the shadow keys throughout the Undercity, which involves going in and out of the Shadow Realm using the Blackstone Fragment. The first of these will be the basic Shadow Torch schematic, found in the building with the furnaces in the middle of the Science District. Head on over there, preferably using the teleportation devices, and enter the building. Once inside, place the Shadow Blocker next to the locked doors. Now, enter the Shadow Realm from the black puddle nearby and pick lock the doors. As long as you're adjacent to the Shadow Blocker, your sanity will not be lowered. Once the doors are unlocked, head to the North Room and pick up the schematic. Use the Blackstone Fragment to leave the Shadow Realm, then right-click Recall on it to retrieve your Shadow Blocker. With the schematic in hand, use the nearest teleporter and go to the Western Residential District. Bring the schematic to Ketla and retrieve the basic Shadow Torch. Note that this torch can destroy some of the tentacles you'll see in the next area, but not all of them, because it's not strong enough yet. The next schematic you're going to need is the Revitalizing Idol schematic, found in the large building east of the Black Puddle in the Residential District. This one's pretty easy. Just enter the Shadow Realm, destroy the tentacles at the entrance, and return to the real world to retrieve the schematic. Head east and activate the teleporter over there if you haven't already, then use it to teleport to the Western Residential District. Give the schematic to Ketla and retrieve the Revitalizing Idol. Now, use the nearby teleporter to teleport to the Eastern Residential District and place the Revitalizing Idol down next to the teleporter. Enter the Shadow Realm and touch the Revitalizing Idol, which will restore 50% of your sanity. Keep running north and around until you're at the door with the tentacles. Then destroy them, picking up the blue shadow key in the northwest corner of the building. If your sanity is running low after killing the tentacles, you may retrieve the shadow key in the real world instead. Either option is going to work here. Now head to the western building next to the Western Residential District teleporter and place a shadow blocker next to the entrance. Then enter the Shadow Realm and pick lock the doors. Once the doors are unlocked, enter and pick up the schematic. Head back to Ketla and give her the new schematic to retrieve the superior Shadow Torch so you can burn all the big wiggly boys. The next item you're going to need is the Anima Portal schematic. Recall your devices via the Blackstone Fragment if you haven't already, then head to the Science District. Once there, enter the Shadow Realm and make your way around the northwestern building. Destroy the tentacles found further up north, then pick up the schematic and return to the real world. Head back to Ketla and give her the schematic for the Anima Portal. Now for the last one. The last schematic available in the Undercity is the Perfected Shadow Torch schematic. First, teleport to the plaza, then enter the Shadow Realm. Destroy the tentacles at the building to the southwest. Now, return to the real world and enter the building, making your way west to the outside area where you find the white shadow key. Exit the building and teleport to the palace. If you have left any devices placed somewhere, recall them all via the Blackstone Fragment. Now head to the northwestern corner of the palace where you'll see a locked chest. Place the Shadow Blocker in front of this chest, and the Anima Portal between the two braziers. Finally, the Revitalizing Idol, several tiles southeast of the Anima Portal. It should look something like this. Enter the Shadow Realm from the plaza and then make your way back to the palace. Use the Revitalizing Idol, then light the 4 braziers around the chest. The Anima Portal will distract the lost souls while you do so. Once they are lit, they will disappear and the chest can be opened for the schematic. This can take a second or two, so just be patient. The positioning of all your tools is really important here. Once you have the schematic, return to the real world and recall your devices. Then head back to Ketla. Once there, give her the schematic. She will tell you that this is a fake, marked by something called the Black Hand of the Silent Choir, which she expects you to immediately know without any explanation. When you ask for more questions, she goes full gypsy fortune teller and goes into a trance, which you eventually break her out of. She tells you time is running out, just like Kasonde did like 20 quests ago, and asks to find the Church of the Silent Choirs, hidden somewhere in the city. Now head east to the Residential District. Once there, enter the Shadow Realm and run to the building with a pub icon where you obtain contained a superior Shadow Torch schematic. Head upstairs and touch the remnant in the northeastern room. You'll discover that the church is found in the cistern below and that you'll need some sort of icon to reach them. Return to the real world to replenish your sanity and re-enter the Shadow Realm once you're good. Then burn the tentacles from the doors of the building next to the Cathedral Teleporter and the tentacles from the other building just west. Return to the real world and pick up the final Shadow Key from the rectangular building. Head inside to the square building, then place the Shadow Blocker by the chest and picklock it from within the Shadow Realm. You're going to acquire 1/2 of the icon segment. For the other half, you need to head to the Science District. Once you're there, enter the northwesternmost house of the Science District opposite the cave where you got the Anima schematics, and pick up a Shadow Key from the top of a crate in the northeastern corner of the room. Next, enter the Shadow Realm from the Science District and head south to the building next to the South Science District Teleporter. Destroy the tentacle there, open the chest inside, and assemble the segments to create the strange icon. Now go back to the residential district and enter the drain in the center. Go through the door in front of you and down the ladder to the east. Head to the center of the room and inspect the ancient pillar. You're going to start totally tripping balls here and talk to other versions of yourself telling you there's actually 2 more boss fights after this one, which is just some great foreshadowing. You then piss a lake underneath yourself and get surrounded by more hallucinations saying, do you really think you can save them? Which you immediately realize you've already done this much, so you might as well see this meme through to the end. Eventually, Ketla wakes you up and says some shit about friendship and hope. She also apparently found the last schematic and destroyed the bad totem, which is completely believable, I guess. Once this lore dance is over, take the torch from Ketla's workbench and burn the row of tentacles blocking the sunken cathedral from the Shadow Realm. Now it's time to dance with the devil, so head back to a bank and resupply. This is going to get really ugly really fast. Before departing, make sure to bring the Blackstone Fragment, as you cannot start the fight without it. Bring your best magic combat gear and also bring runes for ice spells to counter one of the Whisperer's attacks. Alright, here we go. Medusa Oblongata. The fight is, in my opinion, an absolute masterpiece. It's very hard, very rewarding, and challenges basically all forms of mechanical reaction that you have. In terms of boss design, the Whisperer is really fun, guys, but it's hard as fuck for the average player, so be ready and let's talk gear and inventory. For the Whisperer, you're going to need magic combat centric gear, and you'll need to be able to cast ice spells. Using the Ancient Magic spellbook is mandatory here. I use the Trident of the Seas along with runes for an ice spell from the magic spellbook. Aside from that, whatever you have to boost your magic attack. Occult Necklace, Tormented Bracelet, Mage Cape, Prayer Book, Ancestrals, Arams, whatever the hell you want. You need to do a lot of damage because the last phase of this fight is a straight up DPS race, and the DPS check is pretty hard if you aren't perfect with your movements. I would also heavily recommend you fight this boss with your sound on if you are a player who typically plays without sound, because the Whisperer's attacks all have different sound bites which can help you immensely. I'll explain more throughout the fight. In your inventory, you're going to need the Blackstone Fragment you got earlier, runes to cast the ice spells and any other spells you need, along with a couple prayer potions, some magic combat potions, a stamina pot, food, and definitely a couple emergency teleports. When you're just learning, you're going to need a lot of those, trust me. Now mechanics. The Whisperer basically has 2 alternating mechanics from 100% to 0% health. Once you kill her, she will revive with 100 health and have a burn phase to deal with. Throughout the fight, you're going to have this cute little sanity meter that's slowly going to drain depending on if you get hit by attacks. It will also slowly begin to drain when you enter the Shadow Realm. Listen, you need this meter to stay very high before you enter that last phase of the fight. I'll explain why when we get there, but understand if you can't keep your sanity high, which is roughly, 75% or so, prior to the Whisperer reviving, it's going to be extremely hard to meet the DPS check of this last phase if you are not in insane gear. As per usual, I tried to do this with like a real Mod Podge of gear. I said they used the Trident of the Seas. I think I have like full Arams or something on here. It's a shit show, and I really regret not using better gear. Now, during the 2 alternating phases, This is what to expect. First, the Whisperer is going to attack 3 times per auto attack with either ranged or magic. The ranged shots are purple barbs, while the magic shots are blue orbs. The pattern of these attacks are dependent on the phases of the fight, with the first 3 sets of attacks being 3 straight ranged or 3 straight magic. Both of these attacks have different sounds associated with them, so it's really helpful to get used to the sounds you hear versus looking at the actual projectiles. Use that to your advantage. After each set of those 3 attacks, a set of tentacles are going to convene towards where you were originally standing when they first appeared. Initially, the tentacle will come at you in an X shape, meaning if you were in the middle of a square, they would be coming at you from the 4 corners. You're going to need to move 1 tile left, right, up, or down to dodge these tentacles. Getting hit by this will deal 10 to 20 damage and, more importantly, drain your sanity by 20%. So for this, it's pretty simple. Prayer Flick to protect from magic or range depending on the attack coming, and then move 1 tile left, right, up, or down to avoid the tentacles. Also super important, make sure you click the boss afterwards to begin attacking again. You do not want to wait until she attacks you and you auto attack. This is a common thing throughout the fight. You're going to have to be re-clicking her constantly. You're going to do this prayer flicking and moving 3 times, then the Whisperer will activate one of her 3 special attacks. Each one of these special attacks will require you to activate your Blackstone Fragment and move into the Shadow Realm, which will cause your sanity to drain slowly, so keep that in mind. More on this at the end of explaining all of these. The special attack is used at random, so let's cover each of them in what I feel is the easiest to the hardest. I'll also include a tip or 2 for each one if there are any. The first special attack is the Corrupted Seeds. This one's really simple. A bunch of seeds will pop up around the Whisperer. All are grayish blue color until you activate your fragment into the Shadow Realm, at which point you're going to see they're either dark green or light green. Your job is to run around in a specific pattern and step on all of the light green seeds without touching the dark green ones. You need to touch all of the light green seeds before the timer over the Whisperer runs out, or you'll get pulled back into the real world and lose a shitload of sanity, at which point it's going to be extremely hard to beat the boss. Most of the time you're going to find yourself running in a nice symmetric geometric pattern like this one. Don't overthink it, just click on the closest orb and follow the pattern as quickly as possible. Once you get really good at this, an extremely helpful tip is to deactivate your Blackstone Fragment and leave the Shadow Realm once you know the pattern and where to run. This is going to prevent the unnecessary sanity drain from being in the Shadow Realm. This can be kind of challenging for the inexperienced PvMer, but it makes it a pretty good difference later in the fight. Next is a Screech attack. During this, the Whisperer is going to teleport to the back of the room and gather energy for 3 successive Screech attacks. While doing this, the pillars are going to pop up around her. As soon as she teleports, you need to run up behind one of these pillars and activate your fragment to enter the Shadow Realm. Because you're going to be using these pillars to block yourself from the Screech attack, just like the pillars you used earlier during the Kasonde fight. You'll notice as soon as you enter the Shadow Realm, all of the pillars will have health bars with varying damage done to them. Basically, you're just going to stand behind any of them at first, then after the first Screech attack, each of the pillars are going to lose a third of their health. If the pillar loses all of its health, it's destroyed. You see where I'm going here. Your job is to plan where you're going to run, making sure that you are near another pillar that will survive the second and then the third Screech attack. This isn't too bad because Jagex thankfully designed the fight for pillars to spawn that are relatively easy to run between. But you still have to react very quickly because the Screech attack comes very quickly. Once all of the attacks have been completed, all of the pillars will be gone. If you ever get hit by one of the Screeches, you take 35 damage and get a very nasty 35% insanity drain. A good tip here is to always start in the middle, so you can easily move to whichever side has the better setup for the 3 successive attacks. Finally, we have the Soul Siphon. This is definitely the most annoying because you have to react very quickly. Once you get it down, it's not bad, but a shitty set of spirits or misclick can really fuck you up. During Soul Siphon, 12 lost souls will appear around the Whisperer. Once you activate your fragment into the Shadow Realm, you'll see all of them are yelling out a phrase. Your job is to kill all the spirits chanting one specific phrase before the Whisperer's timer runs out. The phrases are Oratio, Sanitas, Mors, and Vita. Of these phrases, Vita is the only phrase where only 2 souls are chanting it. Because of this, you should kill the 2 souls chanting Vita as soon as possible. If you don't, before the timer runs out, you're going to get hit for 30 damage, a 30% insanity drain, and the Whisperer on top will just go ahead and heal herself for 75 damage. In theory, this is the easiest mechanic, but I personally struggled with this one the most because I would accidentally misclick a soul, and once I attacked, I had to wait a few game ticks to attack again, which is critical time for this specific mechanic. Don't panic here, just find the Vita souls and kill them. That's all 3 mechanics, but we need to discuss what happens immediately after all of these special attacks. As soon as the special attack ends, the Whisperer is going to use an ability called Binding Blow. This will bind you in place so you can't move, at which point the Whisperer is going to slowly move towards you. There's two ways to deal with this mechanic. Freeze her using an ice spell or move more than 10 tiles away from her prior to getting bound. The latter is because after 10 tiles, the Whisperer is just going to stop moving towards you and begin the next phase of shooting projectiles at you. This happens after every special attack, and you need to make sure you do not get caught, because she will bitch slap the fuck out of you if you aren't ready. Now, as soon as the special attack phase ends, the Whisperer will resume her launching of 3 different projectiles at you. The only difference here from the first 2 phases is 2 things. First, the 3 tick attacks will no longer be all the same. Instead, it's going to be ranged magic or magic ranged. Second, instead of coming at you in an X formation, the tentacles will come in a cross, meaning you'll need to move 1 tile diagonally to prevent being hit by the tentacles. Technically, the only new thing really here to worry about is having to prayer flick from magic to range or vice versa on the last of the 3 projectiles each time. Just like before, get into the rhythm of flicking and dodging, and do this 3 separate times, at which point the Whisperer will use another special attack. After the second special attack, the next phase of attacks are again different, as this time it can be ranged ranged or magic ranged magic. Basically, the Whisperer will alternate, meaning you have to flick very quickly. Also, the tentacles can converge in both the X formation or the cross formation, so you'll need to react to that as well. After that, the third special attack will happen. At this point, you should pretty much have the Whisperer at 0 health. You've done it. You've gotten all 4 medallion pieces, and yeah, it never really truly ends. Let's talk about the secret mythic only phase of this fucking. Once you get the Whisperer to 0 health, she will revive herself with 100 health, and the final phase begins. During this phase, the Whisperer will have an increased attack speed and launch volleys at you constantly. She will always start with 2 ranged volleys, then switch to 2 magic volleys, following that pattern. While this is happening, after every single one of her attacks, tentacles will spawn and converge on you, meaning you will be moving constantly during this phase. For the average player who hasn't been through something like this, or like the Inferno or raids, this can be extremely challenging. Expect to take a lot longer to learn this phase than any other fight from the entire quest. The best way to deal with these mechanics is to master the rhythm. The Whisperer will automatically start with 2 ranged projectiles, so pray ranged immediately at the start. You should attack the Whisperer once, then move immediately to avoid the tentacles, and then re-attack right after, making sure to prayer swap after you hear the second projectile. So master this rhythm. Prayer swap, attack, move, attack, move. Prayer swap, attack, move, attack, move. Prayer swap, attack, move, attack, move. While all this is happening, your sanity will be draining constantly, which is why this is considered a burn phase, meaning you need to kill the Whisperer before your sanity reaches 0. Otherwise, you'll die in like 5 seconds because you start taking massive damage and get cucked by the darkness or some shit. Some useful tips here are to set up moving locations like you see I have here. You can also move around the boss, which was actually how I killed it for the first time. But the real point of emphasis is to only move a tile or 2 away, because moving very far at one time will completely throw off your rhythm. This was the mistake I was constantly making because I would start to panic after I got hit by 1 tentacle or missed a prayer swap. You cannot keep running 3+ tiles after every attack. Keep it simple and understand you should keep the rhythm of your attacks and movement consistent with each other. A person who moves even 1 tile over, then 2 by accident, then 1 is still going to have a much better chance of success than someone who clicks 4 tiles away, then 2, then 3, because each tile you move takes away another game tick. Combine that with the other mechanics happening, as well as having to click on the boss, is a recipe for disaster. No pun intended. Like I said, for the average player, this will take time. I'm not ashamed to admit it took me about 4 hours to kill this boss. I died or had to teleport out constantly, especially if my insanity wasn't at a good point during the start of the burn phase. I changed my gear constantly to see if I could output more damage or prevent more damage, but ultimately, don't get discouraged. Just keep trying and learn from your mistakes. Master the rhythm of the fight, and I promise you it will be very rewarding once you finally knock it out. I ended up doing this boss again later with the best gear that I had available instead of what I was trying to do for the quest, and it was so incredibly easy because I had mastered how to fight this boss properly. After defeating the Whisperer, search her entrails for her medallion. I'm not even gonna pretend this is over, because it's not. It's never gonna end. You think it's a fun, harmless adventure, but this is a maze and you are the rat. Alright, so after getting the last medallion piece from the Whisperer, before you head back up to the Ancient Vault, you need to run to a bank. There is, you guessed it, another fight coming up very soon. You remember that mysterious figure that you've been dealing with every time you have a medallion piece? The one that's, full stalker, unhinged levels of weird, can't take a hint to leave you alone? Yeah, that chick. She's next. So run to a bank and prepare your inventory to deal with her. For this fight, you're going to need gear for 2 different combat styles, preferably ranged and melee so you can use Protect from Magic, since she hits like a truck with magic and can lower your stats with her magic spells. The reason why you need to is because she uses protection prayers and swaps them constantly. On top of that, you'll need to use the standard Desert Treasure fight inventory, emergency teleports everywhere, because you sure as hell ain't one-shotting this bit. In reality, the gear swaps, a couple prayer pots, some food, the usual, along with the last medallion. This is what mine look like if you want to get a good idea. Once you're ready, head to the Ancient Vault and attempt to put the medallion on its correct statue. You'll be knocked out by the mysterious figure and be imprisoned, where you can search the bed nearby for a lockpick, and then brute force picklock the prison door. Go into the eastern room and get your stuff from the chest. You'll notice the medallion is missing and say, wow, who'da thunk? Then run over into the western room and inspect the altar. The mysterious figure will appear and the fight will start. The mysterious figure is no pushover. She's annoying as hell to deal with and has a few main mechanics. The first is that she uses protection prayers and swaps between them every 3 attacks. This is pretty simple to deal with, just pay attention to her protection prayers and her attack style and update your protection prayer and gear swap accordingly. Second, she will periodically launch a purple orb at you. If this orb hits you, it deals up to 35 typeless damage. Yes, typeless, like other fights in this goddamn quest, meaning it just sucks no matter how high your prayer or defense is. These orbs can also knock you back or even better, freeze you. The take-home lesson is the purple ball is bad, move away from it, it's pretty easy to dodge. These are her only mechanics, but while it may not seem like much, she moves around constantly, she attacks very rapidly, and managing your gear swap, prayer swap, and moving out of the orbs can be chaotic. My advice here is to only move when you need to dodge the orb. Don't move otherwise. Focus on making sure you swap correctly, and let moving around be the secondary focus. Since she's so fast and runs around a lot, some can get panicky and start running around to avoid her, but so long as you stay focused on your swaps and moving only when the orb is coming, it's not too bad of a fight. If at any point you need to leave, hop out of the barrier in the room where you'll appear just south of the desert quarry. And then pep yourself back up, slap your ass or whatever you need to do and get back in there, champ. Only 30 more boss fights to go. Let's head to a bank and prepare for the next headache. For the last section of Desert Treasure 2. Yeah, that's right, baby. The end is near. You're going to need melee gear with high range defense, a ranged weapon swap. The blowpipe works pretty well here. That's what I ended up using. An anti-poison, 2 or 3 prayer pots, some food, and combat potions. Your inventory should look something like this. Once you're set up, return to the Ancient Vault. A cutscene will play where you and Asgarnia Smith will argue over the treasure. He throws some pocket sand at you, leaves you highly bewildered. Eventually, you see that little fuck put the medallion piece up and went down into a secret passageway, Indiana Jones style. Head down into the vault where you'll see him hard-miring over the actual desert treasure, someone's fucking drinking horn. Somehow you know it's the Frosting Horn, which was explained when you started this quest a few years ago. Suddenly, Dr. Bannikin will appear and he tells you it's actually Azanadra, a Majorat you freed in the ancient pyramid. Zoink Scoob, this is quite the mystery we have here. Azanadra explains that this is actually the Elder Horn, which basically makes everyone the wielder's slave. There's some cool lore talk that's too cool for me to care about. Haziel shows up somewhere in the mix along with Anakra and Akthanakos. Dude, I'm on page 26 of this script. I've given up. Pretty much everyone was waiting for you to open the vault because that's just how logic works in this game. They all argue or some shit, mention Khazard, and Anakra bitch slaps Asgarnia Smith, revealing him to be a Majorat named Slinky. Slink was the big vat all along, pretending to be Asgarnia, Mia, Kasonde, Ketla, and the assassin all along in order to make sure you had the plot armor necessary to succeed. Eventually they all argue again, everyone kind of splits off into their own weird date, and you're left to kill Slinky and the 4 whites he summons, which are, you guessed it, all the people that helped you during the quest. During this last fight, you need to fight all 4 of Slinky's whites one at a time. If you die or leave, you will have to start from the beginning again. Let's run through all 4 of these in order, starting with the Forsaken Assassin. The Forsaken Assassin uses both ranged and melee randomly, using ranged a little more often. In order to damage him, you have to lure him towards the white smoke he throws around the room, just like in the Secrets of the North quest. If the assassin stands in the pink smoke, he will heal for around 25 hit points, and if you stand within them, they will damage you for around 10 damage per tick. Basically, just stay the fuck away from the pink smoke and keep him in the white smoke. It's pretty Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. He also throws bottles of poison on your current tile that are indicating by a throwing animation. He will throw 3 in a row, which can be avoided by moving when you see the animation begin. If you get hit, they deal a really high amount of damage and inflict poison. The assassin will always perform an auto attack almost immediately after throwing the 3rd bottle, so just be prepared for that. Just dodge the poison bottles and use the full room if you need to. Once you finish the assassin, Ketla will appear. Ketla's definitely the most annoying, I would say, and just does the most damage of all of the 3 over time. She uses ranged attacks and will periodically summon 4 or 5 clones of herself to attack alongside her. She follows a simple attack rotation: 2 auto attacks, shadow clones, 2 auto attacks, 1 or 2 charge shots. Then repeat. Learn to memorize this rhythm and react accordingly. The shadow clones have a max hit of 7 through protect from missiles, which is why it's preferred to wear ranged defense gear, since you can take a lot of damage here slowly over time, which is a big no-no for a marathon style fight like this. Shortly after summoning shadow clones, a skull will appear above her that looks like the vengeance icon, indicating the oncoming charge shot. Quickly move behind a shadow clone and the shot will hit them instead. You absolutely do not want to get hit by these because they hit like a truck. The charge shots can happen up to 2 times per batch of shadow clones summoned, so keep at least 2 of them alive to survive her charge shots. They each have 1 hit point, so a fast weapon such as darts will dispose of them extremely quickly. I prefer to just use a blowpipe, but to each their own. Once you finish off Ketla, Kasonde will appear. Luckily, Kasonde's fight is basically identical to his fight from earlier. He uses melee and ranged. He still throws vials at you, only instead of venom, the vials now inflict corruption if you're hit by them, starting at 4 damage each. Those vials also have a typeless hit on them when you get hit by them, and being hit by one will damage you in the low 30s. For his explosion attack, he'll perform 3 shockwaves in succession, but there will be a small section close to him where you can stand safely. As his potions will not disappear on the ground, it's important that these do not build up near the center, or you're going to have no room to avoid Kasonde's explosions, which deal typeless damage in the low 30s. This definitely takes some getting used to, and you really need to pay attention to where he is in the room. Try to keep him closer to one of the sides to make this a lot easier to dodge, and always keep him away from his poison drops on the ground because you're going to need to move around those to not get hit by his explosion. Once you defeat Kasonde, Persten shows up. Persten the Deceitful attacks with magic and uses 2 special attacks. The first is an attack where she will channel power to launch lightning strikes, indicating by a looming shadow. These hit in the high 20s and 30s. As her hit points get lower, she will channel subsequent lightning strikes in a row, up to 3. She also conjures a whited portal that has 30 hit points, which spawns whited leeches until destroyed. She can create 2 at a time, and they will always be near the entrance of the room. The whited leeches have 5 hit points and move at a speed slower than walking, but attacking at the same speed as darts on rapid style, and have 100% accuracy, usually hitting between 4 and 6 that cannot be blocked by prayer. You can choose to focus down these portals or just kite the leeches in general. Utilize a special attack weapon if you want, but basically all I did here was use the full room to my advantage and kited the leeches while ranging down Persten with the blowpipe. This whole fight is extremely fun, but very challenging considering the amount of mechanics that you have to learn. Expect to do, death by 1,000 cuts here, where you slowly get further and further into the fight until you finally win. Trust me, when I saw how lengthy this fight was, I was discouraged because I'm like 1,000,000% just wanting to be done at this point, but if you just put in a few good attempts, eventually you'll master each of the whites and it gets easier and easier. Once the last white is killed, Slinky will successfully teleport the Elder Horn away and tell you I'm gonna see you next time on Dragon Ball Z. Anakra and Athanakos, whatever his name is, will leave, and then Haziel bitches at Azanadra for something. Eventually, Haziel leaves, and Azanadra apologizes to you for lying, saying you're an important player now, whether you like it or not. To show his thanks, he will upgrade your Ring of Visibility into a Ring of Shadows, and advises you to prepare for when the time comes. At this point, finally, mercifully, you are greeted with that beautiful scroll and have completed the quest. Let me be the first to tell you, congratulations. This is, in my mind, the hardest quest in OSRS by a mile. Print that shit out, put it on your wall. You deserve it, man. Thanks for sticking it out. Good luck, have fun, and I'll see you on the next one.